Hi, I'm Sukhman, and I want to talk about this amazing book that Chinua Achebe wrote, not during the colonial rule in Africa, but during its collapse, during its downfall. It was published in 1958, and the colonial rule in Africa collapsed fully in the 1960s. Yes, I'm talking about Things Fall Apart. In the first episode of the Dissecting Series, we walk through and talk through this book and see for ourselves, can fear decide who you become? I'd first like to dive into the plot summary. Please forgive me if I pronounce the names or the titles incorrectly. The book is set in a place called Umofia and revolves around Okonkwo, our protagonist, who is a prosperous, renowned man known far and wide for his strength. Someone from Mbino, a neighboring clan, has murdered a woman of Okonkwo's clan, so he is sent as an emissary to let them choose between war and compensation. He is treated with great respect, his reputation precedes him, and he comes back from Mbino with the compensation, which is a young woman, a virgin, to replace the woman who was murdered, and a young boy, Ikemefuna, who was the son of the murderer. The village elders task Okonkwo to take care of Ikemefuna until they decide what to do with him, and this is how Ikemefuna ends up living with Okonkwo's family. Before we proceed with the plot further, I wish to talk about Onoka, Okonkwo's father. He was a lazy yet gentle man who was looked down upon by the entire clan for those very same personality traits. Okonkwo was really ashamed of Onoka, so he decides to be the exact opposite of his father. He's rigid, he's tyrannical, he's impatient and heavy handed with his entire family. And he makes his wives and his children suffer. He sees his father's innate laziness in his oldest son, Nwoye, and tries to beat it out of him. But things begin changing when Nwoye and Ikemefuna start spending time together. Nwoye begins liking, or at least, well, he pretends to like, masculine tasks. This pleases Okonkwo. For Okonkwo, showing affection is a sign of weakness, and that is something I'm quoting directly from the book. But even though he doesn't say it or show it, he holds affection for Ikemefuna. The boy calls him father and accompanies him places like a son would. Once Ikemefuna finally feels like he belongs and rarely thinks back to his own family, the clan oracle pronounces for Ikemefuna to be killed. We all saw that coming, right? Oguefi Ezeudu, a respected village elder, advises Okonkwo to not be a part of the boy's killing, considering the boy calls him father. But Okonkwo fears being seen as weak, so of course he tags along. And eventually things happen and things go wrong, and he ends up delivering the finishing blow that kills Ikemefuna. Okonkwo doesn't mention anything at home, but Nwoye instinctively knows that Ikemefuna has been killed. And that breaks his heart. Something inside him breaks. Okonkwo grieves Ikemefuna in his own way. And he visits his friend Obierika, who condemns his killing of the boy. He tells him that the goddess wipes out entire families to punish such actions. When Ezeudu dies, Okonkwo's gun explodes at the funeral and kills Ezeudu's 16-year-old son. It was a severe crime to kill a clan member. But it was a female crime because it was accidental. It had no intent behind it. So Okonkwo and his family get a light punishment and are banished from the clan for 7 years. Okonkwo ends up taking refuge in Mbanta, which is his mother's clan. His mother is buried there. Initially, he's quite upset, but his maternal uncle, Uchendu, comforts him and tries to talk sense into him. His friend Obierika visits him in exile and tells him that the Abame clan is no more. A white man had appeared in their clan, and their oracle had defined that he would bring the clan to ruin. So they killed him. He was then avenged by others of his kind, and the clan was decimated as a result. So technically, by killing the man, they brought upon themselves the very thing that they wished to avoid. The missionaries make their way into Mbanta as well. Nwoye finds peace in their teachings, so he leaves his family and joins them. 7 years of exile eventually pass, and Okonkwo throws a grand feast to show his gratitude to his mother's kinsmen for harboring him and his family for 7 long years. But upon his return, Okonkwo finds Umuofia changed. Many people have converted to Christianity. The church has laid solid roots and has a functioning court. Okonkwo grieves for his clan, for his people, but mostly for the men who had turned soft. An atrocity soon takes place. A convert, Enoch, unmasks an Igwugwu. No one in the clan had ever heard of such a thing before. They burn down Enoch's compound and then the church, but no one harms the priest or the missionary, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith then complains to the district commissioner. I'm going to call him DC just for the sake of convenience. So Mr. Smith complains to the DC, who in turn sends for the leaders of Umuofia. Taking Okonkwo's advice, the leaders go to see the DC armed with machetes, but they get tricked into getting imprisoned. The DC demands a fine, or rather ransom, to release them. So the village pays the fine and the men are returned. Okonkwo swears to avenge himself, even if Umuofia does not decide on war. The clansmen gather to discuss further action, but the DC sends messengers to stop the meeting. Okonkwo ends up killing one of the messengers, and by the reaction of the clan, he knows that they won't go to war. When the DC comes looking for Okonkwo, Obierika takes the lead and even asks for the DC's help. The next thing we see is Okonkwo's dead body hanging from a tree. He has killed himself and his clansmen are unable to touch him. A man says, and I quote, "It is an abomination for a man to take his own life. It is an offense against the earth, and a man who commits it will not be buried by his clansmen. His body is evil, and only strangers may touch it." This ending has stayed with me for years. A man whose clan, whose customs, whose traditions defined him, shaped him, made him who he was, died in a way that defied and defiled it all. He died an abomination as per the custom, but it's understandable in a way, because he died as himself. He died as who he was, rigid, unbending, unyielding, unconquered. He died Okonkwo. The fact that his clansmen could not touch him could be premeditated on his part. The disappointment and betrayal he must have felt would have been immense, and even in death, he refused to be touched by his own clansmen. His death could be symbolic of many things. The death of rigidity when it came to traditions and customs, the onset of a more permanent change in the local customs. But most of all, it implies that when times are changing, the rigid, the unbending, and the unaccepting do not survive. The only tree that survives a storm is the one that can bend. I'll quote Octavia E. Butler here. "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change." It's from her book, The Parable of the Sower, in case you're interested. From local traditions to social etiquette, from wedding ceremonies to harvest festivals, Achebe covers everything in the book. He also tells us about Chi, or personal gods, and how the week of peace is observed to honor the earth goddess. There's a lot about religious beliefs in the book as well. There's the oracle, the priestess, the evil forest. But these are things that would make the video much longer than I intend for it to be. But let me know in the comments if you would like to hear about it. I can make a shorter video about it. Back to the topic though, there's also the New Yam Festival, a harvest festival, which is followed by wrestling matches for entertainment. I don't know about the wrestling part, but I do know that it's still celebrated. And now for the etiquette. There's a particular scene in the book where a guest comes to meet Okonkwo's father, Unoka. Unoka brings out a kola nut and insists for the guest to break it. They both go back and forth, insisting that the other should do it. This particular social behavior shows mutual respect. Now, this is also something that is extremely common in Asian, and by Asian I mean like the entire continent. Another thing that's similar in our cultures is how Unoka and his guests talk about a gajillion random things before the guest finally gets to the point. We do it too. While things may have changed in places where life has gotten faster and people don't have the time to be considerate of each other anymore, we can still see these things. We can still observe them. At least I still see it happen all the time, all around me. Somewhere in the beginning of the book, the author tells us that Okonkwo has a stammer. It's such a tiny detail, but it speaks volumes about how Okonkwo may have become an aggressive person. Let me read out this bit from the book. He had a slight stammer, and whenever he was angry and could not get his words out quickly enough, he would use his fists. Now, this reminds me of children. They resort to violence pretty quickly when they're unable to properly express themselves. Okonkwo, too, may have adopted this behavior in his childhood. Okonkwo's biggest fears that are mentioned in the book are the fear of failure and of weakness. And they both root back to his father, Unoka. He's afraid of being similar to his father, who was gentle, meek, and afraid of blood. People laughed at his father, insulted him, called him names. Even Okonkwo's childhood playmate had called Unoka a woman for his inability to work hard and get a title for himself. And Unoka had vowed to hate everything his father did and liked. He kept that vow till his last breath. During the entire book, we see Okonkwo's fear either of failure or of being like his father influence not only his behavior but also all of his decisions. His fear dictates how he behaves with his family, his clansmen, and even himself. It brings us back to the question we started with. Can fear decide who you become? I'll let you decide. Among the Igbo, the art of conversation is regarded very highly, and proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten. Beautiful, isn't it? There are so many wonderful proverbs scattered throughout the book in dialogues, providing more flavor, more solidity, more substance to them. My favorite one from the book would be "A child who washes his hands could eat with kings," which basically means that while age is respected, achievement is revered. Now let's circle back to the colonizers for a bit. We need to do that, don't we? When you refuse to try to understand someone's language, someone's customs, someone's way of life, it becomes so much easier to dehumanize them, to see them as less than, to see them as expendable. And you see it so clearly by the end of this book. The DC who sees Okonkwo's hanging body thinks to himself that writing about Okonkwo would make for an interesting read. That perhaps not a chapter, but a reasonable paragraph about him would be a good idea. And the title of the book he's writing? The Pacification of the Primitive Tribes of the Lower Niger. Before things fall apart, there were no novels written about the African continent or her people by her own people in English, and understandably so too, because the colonizers brought the language. And this is what makes this book important. It describes people, living, breathing people living in societies with their own social norms and etiquette, with their own politics, with their own governance. And once you see all that, it becomes harder to dehumanize them. Language is important. Literature is important. Multiple perspectives are important. While its historical significance will never lessen, this book has another theme running, sometimes plainly, sometimes in an undercurrent. Complex father-son relationships. Okonkwo carries his fear of resembling his father throughout his life. Okonkwo, out of this very fear, kills Ekemefuna, who's like a son to him. And because he kills Ekemefuna, he also breaks his own son, Nwoye's heart. Okonkwo is quite possibly scared for Nwoye because he resembles Okonkwo's father, who is looked down upon by the entire clan. His tough way of parenting eventually causes Nwoye to leave. I think it's pretty obvious by now that I absolutely love this book and admire the writer. And that's all for now. I'll end this video here. Let me know in the comments if I've missed out or overlooked something important. And thank you so much for watching, especially if you watched till the very end. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe.